Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. If you watch ESPN, you'll recognize the voice on the other end of today's conversation, but you probably don't know his whole story. Stephen A. Smith is one of America's most popular sports figures, known for dishing out his opinions on the hit show First Take. He's also the host of the podcast No Mercy and the founder of his own production company. In his new memoir, Straight Shooter, Stephen shares the unlikely story of how he went from a sports-obsessed kid with dyslexia to ESPN's highest-paid personality. His story is one of relentless drive, passion, and grit. In our conversation today, we talk about the highs and lows of his career, overcoming obstacles to achieve his dreams, and showing up as your authentic self. Let's go. This is my conversation, Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A., welcome. I need to start here, man. So using the A in your byline, get me inside of that. And maybe when did that become a part of you more deeply? And tell me a little bit more about the meaning behind it.
You're talking about my byline as in Stephen A. Smith?
Yeah, Stephen A.
It emanated from, it was a dedication to my mother. When I got left back in the fourth grade and the struggles that I've had throughout particularly the early part of my life, she was somebody that believed in me immensely and just refused to give up, refused to settle, refused to allow me to settle. And because that was the reality, the best way that I can put it, Molly, is that it's one thing for me to be successful in life. It's another thing to be successful at the very thing that was a deficiency and such a debilitating force in my life that I didn't know if I'd ever succeed in anything at all. If I were to be somebody that got left back for the whole year, the fourth grade, because I had a first grade reading level, and then to turn around and to be a professional athlete or an artist or whatever, okay, well, that's a relief and that's a great thing, all right? But to succeed in the world of journalism, when reading comprehension was my challenge, it has more of a direct and palpable impact. And I give credit to my older sister, Linda, my family friend, Tiver, but no human being that is more than my mama.
I know you love your mama. I want to talk about her. You know, it's interesting, Stephen A., with social media today, anyone can have a platform. Anyone can have an audience. But you came to it differently because you cut your teeth, as you just said, as a journalist, as a beat writer. How did that shape your career and serve you as a differentiator?
I appreciate you saying that because that's one of the things that I have a hard time reminding because I'm such a ubiquitous personality and I'm an individual that's seen on television a minimum of 5 days a week, most of the time 6 or 7, a minimum of 2 hours a day, sometimes 3 or 4 hours a day. And that's just live. That doesn't take into account the taped and the re-airs and stuff like that. And it's real easy for people to see that I'm a guy that is, I'm in the public eye because I'm on TV every day. What I try to remind people is that I cut my teeth and, my blood, sweat, and tears come from me climbing this ladder in this business. And it's important that people recognize that because there was no social media. You see, today, people don't talk about this enough, but do you realize because of the advent of social media and because of, particularly in my industry, professional athletes sort of thinking they found their voice, some have, some haven't, but you find your own voice, you can defend yourself, you can speak for yourself. You don't need the media. You don't need to communicate with them. You don't need to sit around and hope that they quote you correctly. You don't need to give them shine by doing interviews on their podcast or whatever. You don't have to do any of those things. So as a result, because these athletes have their own voice and feel that way, you literally can get away with simply monitoring them and writing without ever having to ingratiate yourself with them. I came up at a time where you had to be at those games, you had to be inside those locker rooms, you had to cultivate relationships, you had to network and build resources. You had to do all those things, all of them. You had to do all of them. And so, because you had to do all of them, to me, when people call me screaming A and stuff like that, it doesn't really offend me, but I'm mindful of it because I make sure you call me whatever you want. Just don't forget my resume.
Right.
Don't forget
Right.
that I did 4 internships, the Winston-Salem Journal twice, the Greensboro News and Record, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I wrote for the New York Daily News. I wrote for the Philadelphia Inquirer for 7 years where I got promoted 7 or 8 times. I did television at CNN-SI and then Fox Sports and then ESPN. This is earned. The opinion that I express and where I come from, it's earned the hard way and the old-fashioned way. I didn't just sit up there one day without any education, without any checks and balances, without any barriers, and just say, you know what, I'm going to start my own podcast. Or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that because I think I can have an audience that will reach me or whatever, and I got opinions that I want to say, and I'm pulling clips from what everybody else is doing. No, I'm one of those dudes that actually went out there and did it. And so my opinion, as I've said on many occasions, is earned.
I love how you say that. And now you're the face of ESPN. I mean, you are the face, but it hasn't come without, as you share, right, some low points. I mean, you had a show canceled in 2007, and then ESPN didn't renew your contract in 2009. And all of that, of course, plays out publicly, as does so much. What did you learn about yourself, Stephen A., inside of that journey and about your career?
Well, it's what I chronicled in my book, Straight Shooter, which, by the way, was also a dedication to my mother. The title of the book is dedicated to her because she was very much a straight shooter. When I wrote the book, my memoir, I just decided to tell the world who I am, why I am the way that I am, what I went through and endured to get to this point, to be the way that I am, as it pertains to my perspective, the way that I think, the way that I feel, why, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of it is just residue from the very experiences that you pointed out. ESPN, when they let me go in 2009 because of a contract dispute, it was an eye-opening experience for me because I was definitely humbled. Clearly, the intent was to humble me. And the support that I thought I had wasn't necessarily what I thought it would be because the person that mattered most to me in this world has always been my mama until my 2 daughters were born. And even then, there's only equal. No one usurps my mama. And so when she looked me in my face and called me on the carpet for my behavior, my attitude, and all of these other things, and the things that I could have been doing better, and how I didn't have the right attitude, and how she didn't blame the bosses for not necessarily wanting me in their camp, it was a devastating thing to hear. Because when you hear it from such a source, you have no choice but to shrink and ultimately, just veer away to the nearest mirror, figuratively speaking, in an effort to look at yourself and to be far more introspective than you may have been in the past. And so that certainly was what I was going through. And it forced me to look at a lot of things in my life, how I got to these points, the belief system that I harbored, why I felt the way that I felt, what I needed to do to change to be better. And I took all my experiences because I had recall, and I remember what I was as a kid, and I remember what I was as a teenager, and I remember the counsel and the advice and the tutelage that I had received from an inordinate amount of people, I might add, that blessed me with their wisdom. It was just up to me to practice it, to put it into practice and to exercise the level of intellect and wisdom that they bestowed upon me. And sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. And when you don't, you get burned. And when you get burned, you learn the hard way. You don't touch that fire again. And that's what I learned.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, moms, I can tell you, Stephen A., my mom can say something and it's a zinger, man, in a couple seconds, right? It straightens you right up. And fast forward, I mean, you've been able to sustain success at an unbelievable level. I mean, First Take has been #1 since its debut in 2012. Tell me about the pressure that I'm imagining, right? That at some level, I mean, every single, right? You've got to show up ready to go, have an opinion, have a point of view on everything at some level. How does that feel? Get me inside of that for you in your head and in your heart day after day. That's real.
It is an honor to be number one. It's an incredible accomplishment. First Take has existed since 2007. It was called Cold Pizza before that. I didn't arrive on the show until 2011. Once I arrived, we were number one, and we've stayed number one for 11 consecutive years. Every month and every year for 11 consecutive years. And that's an incredible honor. It truly is. So on one hand, you're honored by it. You're touched by it. It matters, no doubt. The flip side is that there's an immense pressure that comes with it. Especially in my case, since I'm not the executive producer of the show. It means the buck stops with me. Do I have bosses? Yes. But the bosses have asked me to take a larger role. And obviously I accepted. What you go through is this. In my case is kind of unique because when you're number one, most bosses just leave you alone to do your thing. I have a boss named Dave Roberts. He is incapable of doing such a thing. And he is tyrannical about winning. He never rests. He never lets up. There's always more work to do. There's more to accomplish. There's more standards to set and meet. That is who he is. For any other boss, for any other talent rather, that would be too much to stomach. For me, it's not, because it's him. I happen to love him. I happen to cherish the relationship that we have. I happen to believe firmly that it's a matter of fact, actually, I would never have returned to ESPN if it were not for him. He's the one who made it happen. There were bosses above him who signed off, but they leaned on his judgment and his supervision over me to bless the return of Stephen A. Smith to ESPN. And for him to put himself out on a limb, to trust in me, to believe in me the way that he did, I can never thank him enough. I have repaid him in droves because his career has ascended, because I think as I've been more successful, he's properly and justifiably received the credit for it that he richly deserves. So I don't owe anything in regards to that. But for years, he contributed to the tireless effort that I put forth, because even though I know I'm a hard worker, there was a little extra oomph because I wanted to pay him back and repay him for the faith that he had in me. And so I've graduated beyond that, and I'm now at a point where it's just about not feeling that I owe him anything. It's just that I love him, and he's a winner. And this, as a talent, no matter how tyrannical somebody like him could be, because he is tyrannical about winning, I would like to say something to any talent out there, any employee out there, about a particular boss. When you have a boss that you know nothing on this earth matters to them more than winning, that is a boss you can trust. Because you know that everything they do, no matter what suggestion they make, no matter what idea they come up with, no matter how much you agree or disagree or anything like that, there is no boss that is better to have than someone you know is unflinching in their commitment to winning, because you know that whatever they ask you to do is so they'll win. Which means that you, in all likelihood, will reap success from them, because success is all that matters to them. That's my boss, Dave Roberts. And that's why I'm lucky to have him.
It sounds like an unbelievable coach, like a Saban or a Bell. I mean, some of these coaches that are unbelievable, that they beat the shit out of these guys, but the guys know that they're going to win.
Not just win, you're going to win and you're going to excel. It's not like he's won at my expense. You know, he's made me better. So our relationship has gone from him telling me what to do to him making suggestions to him asking me what do I think. And so now it's like it's a partnership, but always with the understanding he's the boss. Like, I never, no matter how successful I am, no matter how much I accomplish, I always, I don't even call him Dave Roberts. I call him the boss. I say boss, boss, boss. That's just me to him. He's a black man. There's very few black men in these positions. And he's incredible in terms of his knowledge and what he's willing to convey. And I'm appreciative of him, even though it's hard to work for him sometimes because he will push and push and push. But I'm incredibly grateful. And now that I have my own podcast, you see No Mercy behind me and what have you. I own this. I operate this. This is not connected with ESPN or whatever. But so much of what I've learned about being the boss has come from people like him, along with others like Norby Williamson and Jimmy Pitaro and Bob Iger. I peel from greatness. And I learn from all of them and I apply it to what I do so I can be the best. And that actually makes work easier because when I have to go to my day job and I have to listen to others, right? I'm thinking about others that have to listen to me. What do I want from them? And what I want from them, I give to my bosses. That's what I strive to do.
That's awesome. And what you've done, I mean, your role, number one ranking, No Mercy, producer, executive, so unique.
Without question.
Under those 4 letters. I mean, that doesn't happen at ESPN.
It doesn't, but I'm not apologizing for it. I earned
Absolutely
it.
not.
I
Absolutely.
earned it. And the thing about it is I earned it with hard work. I earned it with results and productivity. And I earned it with an unflinching commitment to them in terms of what they need from me. I haven't asked them to compromise what they get from me in order to do what I do. And so because of that, this is me on my own time. This is me with my own passion, my own energy, because I have a passion to extend beyond the world of sports. I never want to leave sports. I never want to go away from sports and have my career in the world of sports over. But what I do have an insatiable appetite for is to not be limited to it. And if somebody proposes to me that we want you to be limited to it, that we don't want you to spread your wings and fly, then that's something that is a condition under which I will leave. I will leave the world of sports because I'm not going to have anybody do that to me because just talking about games doesn't do it for me anymore. I love him, love it, never get tired of it until you tell me that's all I can talk about. Then it's a different animal. And so as long as that's not the case, I don't really worry about it. I don't concern myself with it. I just strive to be the best that I can be to the best of my ability. And I'm just trying to make new strides and make things happen with the same level of success that I had in the genre that is the sports world.
Stephen A., what's the biggest misconception you think people have about you? I'm just curious, does it ever bother you or not?
Very little bothers me over the long term. Something might bother me in a moment. But that's it. Like recently, the whole Beyonce brouhaha that I found myself embroiled in, that annoyed me. And the reason why it annoyed me is because we had black folk turning it into black on black. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You know, Sherry Shepherd comes to me and she wanted a debate kind of format for the show and asked me about Rihanna. And I said, I'm a Beyonce fan. What's the problem? I have both of their albums. By the way, I paid for it. They wouldn't give it to me for free. Rihanna's got my money. I got her album and you know, in my portfolio. I mean, what's the problem? You know, I just love me some Beyonce. I think Beyonce might be the greatest female entertainer we've ever seen in history. That's just how I feel about her. Okay, so for me, it's like, if you don't like what I said because you're a Rihanna fan, fine, no problem. But stick to that.
Right.
Let's not try to make it into something that it was not. But then I'm reminded that it's Stephen A. And when it comes to me, lies are told every day. Embellishment is a part of the game. People use me for clickbait all the time. It's a reason why I'm seeing on YouTube videos in excess of 1.5 billion people or more annually. And it's on target to be at 2.2 billion. So I understand it. I get it. I can take it. But I would tell you to answer your question directly, the biggest misconception that I'm challenged with, that I have to deal with, is that, and I think I've helped to eradicate that. It was this perception that I'm this angry black dude. And actually, I'm quite happy half of the time. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a beautiful family. I've got beautiful friends and loved ones. I'm surrounded by love a hell of a lot more than people realize. I've been blessed and fortunate to have a fruitful career that has allowed me to earn my earning potential to be more than I ever thought or ever imagined it would be. I'm okay. And so, and not only that, I'm a human being. And what I mean by that is I'm not perfect. I've certainly made my mistakes in life, Molly, but I know that I never wish harm upon other people, that I like to make people laugh and smile more than I want to make them upset or cry. By and large, I'm about having a good time, and I'm about making sure that people smile a hell of a lot more than they cry when they're around me.
Do you find yourself feeling like you don't have enough time? Like you're drained and burned out? If so, head over to mollyfletcher.com/webinar to access this free training and get my game-changing energy management framework. That's mollyfletcher.com/webinar. Start today and learn to have more energy for what matters most. I heard you talk about a little bit on Draymond's. You're objective, you're fact-based around your positioning, and you're not afraid to fall on the sword when you're wrong. I mean, I heard you say, which I love, right? If you said something wrong publicly, you're gonna react to it publicly. So I love it.
I've always said that's from Mama. She's like, if you're wrong, she said to me, her exact words were, "It's easier. Make sure it's easier for others to live with your truth than for you to have to live with your lies."
That's good.
And my mother told me that. And listen, I laugh and smile a lot. I just don't have that perpetual George Foreman cheesy smile on my face all the time. That's not who I am.
Right.
I laugh when you make me laugh. I laugh when it's funny. If something's not funny, I'm not laughing.
Right.
That's just the way that it is. But that's as really as far as it goes.
What's one thing you wish you knew a little bit earlier in your career? Maybe that would have saved you time, saved you energy, offset some pain, maybe?
I really wish earlier on that I knew the importance of networking, of really making sure that people got to know the true you, who you are, what you're about, what you aspire to be, et cetera, et cetera. I'm the kind of person that I live and fall on my shield when it comes to the truth. And so to me, on many, many occasions, I might have made enemies or not built friends, a stronger friendship foundation, because it was about right or wrong to me. It wasn't about other people's perspectives. It wasn't about where they were coming from. And it certainly wasn't about their truth usurping mine. And so, when you get older, you also realize just because the truth is such a thing doesn't mean everybody has to hear it all the time. There is power, compassion, empathy, and decency in shutting the hell up sometimes and just letting it be, because it's really not that important compared to just chilling out, not saying anything, and just letting things take its natural course. When I was younger, no, you had to hear it. That's not me now. I'm going to give you the truth, but more often than not, as if you ask. If you don't, I don't feel this compulsion to tell you. Sometimes I might, but most times not.
I know your phone rang and still does with guys that call you. And so you have a lot of information of which you have to parcel out where you choose to go and where you don't. I'm curious about the conversations that you had with guys, maybe offline, and has it changed your approach as you've gotten older? Given, you spoke to network, given your relationships at some level, that's a difficult line to walk, I would imagine, particularly at times when you're inside of a a pretty hot debate maybe with somebody about a particular topic.
I would tell you this, it has not changed my approach because my approach has always been built on the right foundation. Be fair, be humane, be as accurate as you possibly can be, all right, and get as close to the truth as possible. Those four elements have never escaped me. I've always been that guy. What I would tell you is that the advent of social media, when I look at today's modern day athlete, and that's why it was so important for me to talk to Draymond Green when I did, you have some people that may resent these athletes for having a voice. I love it. I think they deserve it. I think it's warranted. I think the kind of microscope they are under warrants them deserving to have that kind of influence and to receive that kind of respect. If you don't like somebody, say so. If you think something is factually incorrect, you should point it out. If you have a difference of opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. Because they shouldn't be left at the mercy of the fourth estate to disseminate their views. And so I know that. And what I like is that they know I'm receptive to it because I always tell them, you want to open that Lions Den, that's cool. Because just like you have something to say, I may have something to say back, and that's all right. That's okay. But when you cultivate relationships, there's nothing wrong with having a difference of opinion if all it is a difference. I think one of the problems that exists in our society today, particularly in the political stratosphere, which I blame Capitol Hill for a lot of nonsense that has permeated in our society. They are really doing the American people a grave injustice. And I'm not talking about their politics. I'm talking about their behavior. You cannot expect to be positively influential when you go on the air or the airwaves and you call someone everything but a child of God just because they have a D or an R in front of their name, and then expect to go work with them to get things done. You can't do that. You have to know better. And they don't. They don't care because they cater to the constituency, and all they want to do is find themselves in a situation where they are just receiving votes. And because of that, the message that you're sending to the American public is that you have no ethical foundation. And if you have no ethical foundation, no one wants to listen to you unless you're parroting what their beliefs are. If you're not parroting what their beliefs are, they don't want to listen to you because you have no moral high ground to hold them to. You can't hold anybody to any kind of standard. This is the kind of stuff that we don't pay any attention to because we're just selfish. And that's the damn problem. And I think we have to be better, but I don't see how we're getting any better.
You bring this loving, honest, but direct energy to conversations. I'm curious, do you have a methodology or an approach at some level, right? I mean, because maybe this is something that they need in Washington, right, Stephen A? Maybe this is something that other people can learn from. I mean, the world is full of a lot of people who want to avoid difficult conversations. You step into them every day, all day long on live TV.
Yeah, I'm just myself. And I'm a very, very confident communicator. I'm not flawless. I've certainly made my own mistakes in my career, and I'll make more. But by and large, I'm an extremely confident communicator. Here's what I would tell you. I was no Dick Cheney fan when he was vice president of the United States. I didn't believe the war in Iraq was a just war. I didn't believe there were weapons of mass destruction. They never found those weapons of mass destruction. I never believed that. But let me tell you one moment that makes me smile about Dick Cheney that I'll always appreciate, that I wished every politician emulated. And I'm sorry if I can't remember the names of the reporters or when this happened. It was just some briefing or whatever. And somebody went to Dick Cheney with the cameras rolling, and they said, well, the American people feel the war's not just, and, they said a whole bunch of other things that basically said they don't believe them, they don't approve of what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. Dick Cheney looked that reporter in the face and said, so? And I never forget, I was eating a bowl of cereal. And I almost spit the bowl of cereal out. I couldn't believe it. He said, so? And then he looked at the reporter and he said, so what? He said, you elected us to lead. That is what we're doing. We're not trying to appease you. We're trying to do what's in the best interest of the American people and the United States of America. Sometimes that does not garner fans and support, especially when you're not privy to the information and the intel we're privy to. But that's why you elected us. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I'm in no way quoting him verbatim or anything. I'm just giving you the underlying message he disseminated, he conveyed. And I have never been more appreciative in my life of a politician's words than that. And Barack Obama, I think, is the greatest speech giver I've ever seen, and he's incredibly inspirational. Bill Clinton was an absolute joy to watch. He was just funny to me, and I enjoyed listening to him. George W. Bush, I was waiting for some faux pas he'd make along the way that I found funny or comical or whatever the case may be, but I respect the office. But I'm telling you right now, in terms of something profoundly riveting and dead serious, with no filter, no joking, I've never seen a politician do that other than Dick Cheney. And I really appreciated it because you know what? That would be me. If I have intel, national security intel and stuff like that, no, you don't need to know everything. You elected me to do it. I'm not trying to hide anything from you. I'm not going to get up on the podium and lie to you. What I'm going to tell you is there's some things you have a right to know and there are other things you don't. It is a misnomer and a flat out lie to tell the American people or any people you have sovereignty over in terms of your elected office that they need to know everything. No constituency needs to know everything. There are certain things we don't want to know, Molly. We just want you to fix it without us knowing so we can go on with our lives and be at peace.
Sure.
That's what we want. And I appreciate that. I truly do.
You know, when I think about you, you get a lot of information from guys that call you on the phone, that athletes, coaches, et cetera. And you have that information, no different than what you just alluded to with Cheney. And you have to react to questions and criticism and debate with that information. Get me inside of how you do that from the perspective of you've got so much coming in with your phone from these guys, but then you're inside of a conversation. And at some level, it's like some people don't need to know what you know because you know a lot more than anybody will ever forget.
There's nothing special about me in that regard. Anybody that's a journalist that has any kind of journalistic training knows what that requires. You make judgment calls every day about what you want to reveal, what you have to reveal, and what you can choose not to reveal. Those are all calls you have to make every day. It's inescapable. The challenge that where people marvel at me is that they know I'm getting information every segment of every show. And while I'm debating, arguing, etc., whatever you want to call it, I have to decipher what I can reveal and what I can't. Well, that depends on the information, how important it is, who you're getting it from, and what relationship you have with them. What might be big news to Molly on a particular day may not be nearly as big as the news that I'm going to have on Friday, hypothetically, right?
Sure.
But that same source that Molly would think it's big information from on Monday, I happen to know is small potatoes compared to that information that same source is going to give me on Friday. You make a judgment call. You might not want to alienate this person on Monday because you might need him Friday.
Right, right.
These are the things that you monitor and you watch out for. I'm just blessed and fortunate. What makes me potent from the position and the perch that I sit in is that I was a reporter by trade, a journalist by trade, but that's not what I have to do now. I commentate, I engage in punditry and commentary. And so because of that, I am not obligated to quote unquote report the news. So I can hold off on it for as long as I want to. I can tell you 80% of the time, I don't even call them. They call and give it to me. because of the platform they know I have at my disposal and what they want revealed to the public.
That's an interesting differentiator that you just made. That's so interesting because it's so important that people respect the fact that you are going through all of that in your mind in real time on live television, whereas other journalists have the opportunity to put a pen down, walk outside, come back in, decide what they're going to write. Totally different, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I go off from time to time if a journalist gets on my nerves. I only go off on journalists for one reason and one reason only. You know the process. Stop acting like you don't know. You know what this entails. You're doing it. You know I've done it. Stop acting like you don't know. Like one time I remember he'll remain nameless, but media columnist got at me because I didn't talk about two of my colleagues nearly getting into a fist fight. And I'm sitting there with them like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, would you do that to your job? There is such a thing called the HR department. If you work under that entity, HR gets involved and they inform you that this is an HR matter, we'll handle it. You wouldn't go in the paper and write about it. You'd shut the hell up. So why would you then turn around at me and expect me to do something you know I'm restricted by just like you are? See, that is feeding the public at the expense of the truth. That's feeding the public at the expense of the truth because you might not like me. You might feel some way about me for whatever reason. I have no patience for that because you know better. You know better. And when they do something and they intentionally know better, that's when I get at them.
Where'd your confidence come from, Stephen A? I mean, you used the word very carefully. You said, I'm a confident communicator. But I would also argue that to be a confident communicator, you have to be pretty darn confident too. Where'd that come from?
Attrition. The fact that I've been through it so much, that I've had to experience the things that I've had to experience. It's been an absolute pain in the neck at times. But that experience brings wisdom. Because at the end of the day, the reality of the situation is that each experience has made me better and more well-versed, more prepared to do the things that I'm capable of doing. And so that's just where it comes from. I have no better explanation than that.
What's your next challenge, Stephen A., or growth opportunity in your career? I mean, what's next for you? You've got unbelievable book, Straight Shooter. Loved it. By the way, people got to grab it. I love, No Mercy, your podcast, where you talk about a lot of things well beyond sports. What's next for you?
Well, I want this podcast to win. I want this to be the kind of platform people know they can come to, and that I'm utilizing this to make the kind of difference and the kind of impact that I want to make. I also have a production company where it's called Mr. SAS Productions, where I want to produce television and film shows for television and film. It's an aspiration that I've had for quite some time. It's something that I want to do, and I'm going to continue to try and excel. I just started about a year ago, really getting ready to get my feet off the ground, and I'm looking forward to that challenge because I've been in television for decades now, so I know a thing or two about it and what it takes to succeed in it, and I think that I can help provide content that will contribute to me fulfilling that aspiration. The other thing is that, I wouldn't mind, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm not ruling out the possibility of being the heir apparent to Jimmy Kimmel on late night television, or having my own late night show on a platform like Hulu or something similar to it. We haven't had an African-American hosting late night since Arsenio Hall. I know Trevor Noah did it for Comedy Central. I'm talking network television. That's what I'm talking. Even though, again, can't rule out cable. And Trevor Noah was great. I really loved his work. I have a lot of respect and admiration for him. But for me, I'd love to be on a platform and in a position where I'm making people smile and laugh, and I'm celebrating their greatness in whatever field they're in, as opposed to having to debate and be critical of something or someone every single day. I'd love to show my range and the ability to diversify my portfolio than going that route. So those are the three things: late night television, my production company, and of course this podcast with the No Mercy flag behind me.
I love it. You've been generous with your time. All right, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire. You just fire it back. I know you're good at this, man. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Don't assume everybody's your enemy. There's always someone willing to help you if you're willing to help yourself.
Who told you that?
Well, my mother was one, of course. Mr. Robert Devon, my former mentor at Winston-Salem State University when I went to college, was another. And my brother, Basil, my late brother Basil, he also told me that as well. All amongst many things. He told me many things. That was one of them.
What's your most memorable career moment so far?
My most memorable career moment, I would have to say when I got hired at ESPN. Because when I got hired at ESPN, a few months earlier, I had been promoted to general sports columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer. And when I was promoted to general sports columnist, I turned around. That October, I was promoted to columnist in March, and in October, I got the ESPN job. I had made a promise to my brother after he died that I would never come see him until I achieved this goal, because I knew he had ordained that for me. He told me to my face 2 months before he died that everything that has happened in my career would happen. And I just made a private vow to him, rather than go see him, cry, be depressed, he's gone, to keep him with me wherever I go as I pursued this dream, this goal. And it took me 11 years, but I pulled it off in 2003. He died in 1992. And so I was able to go back to his gravesite and tell him I did it.
Oh, amen. Who would you most like to interview that you haven't had a chance to yet?
Barack Obama.
Awesome.
I didn't always agree with his policies, but a lot of them I did. But the phenomenal man that he is, what an incredible role model. I revere him for the man that he is, more so than for the president that he was. I'm so appreciative of who he was, how he represented us as a community, and how he represented the American people. Because he showed you, whether you agreed or disagreed with him, there's a way to go about doing things. And it's not always our way, the way we want to do it. Sometimes you have to capitulate, modify, and things of that nature. And he taught us that. He reminded us of that. And I was so appreciative of it.
So the show's called Game Changer. Who's a game changer who inspires you and why?
Here's what I would say. When I think about inspiration, particularly in this day and age, he's gone now, but never forgotten. A friend that I love dearly, Kobe Bryant. One of the most brilliant brothers I've ever seen in my life. Spoke 3 languages fluently that I knew of, Spanish, Italian, and English, of course. I'm pretty sure he learned German and Mandarin, but I never heard him use it. Kobe Bryant in 2006 came on my show, quite frankly. And I interviewed him, and backstage, I said to him, man, they raving about me. They love my interviewing style. They love the format. They saying that I got a chance to be the next Oprah. His exact words were, fuck Oprah. Harpo. I said, what? He said, Harpo. He said, you do a disservice to the greatness of Oprah by limiting her to just being some on-air talking personality. She owns her own business. She owns her content. She knows exactly what she's doing. She is phenomenal in more ways than you are appreciating. He said, when you think about her, think Harpo. And when you have aspirations that are similar to her, make sure they're aimed at Harpo, not Oprah.
Wow. And that was what year, Stephen A?
2006.
Has that been in your head and heart from that very moment on? Because it looks like that's what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. But there's one other thing similar to that that's been in my mind from opposite ends of the spectrum, because I used to like this man, had respect for him until he became the president, and that was Donald Trump. I did not like the way he conducted himself as a president. I thought he scared the living hell out of people. And I thought his primary job of a president is statesmanship, making sure that you're galvanizing the folks and alerting everybody to the fact that you represent them all, not just a few. And I was very disappointed in what he did and how he conducted himself, rather. But he did give me advice when he came on that same show, quite frankly. I believe he came on before Kobe. I'm not sure which, before or after, but I think it was before, because it was such a long time ago. And he said this story. He said, when you go to a bank and you borrowed $3 million and you can't pay it back, you've got a problem. He said, but when you go to a bank and you borrow $300 million and you can't pay it back, we've got a problem. The moral of the story is always convince folks to invest in much as you as possible. Do not come cheap, because if they do that, they must ensure your success. That was Donald J. Trump, to yours truly, when he came on my show, quite frankly, on ESPN2 about over 15 years ago. And that advice from him and from Kobe Bryant are the two things that stays with me as it pertains to the business world every single day of my life ever since.
Stephen A., no mercy, straight shooter. I love it. Thank you. You've been generous with your time, man. And I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you for the conversation.
Here are a few of my favorite takeaways from our conversation. Number one, don't put yourself in a box. When you're really talented at something, it can be easy to allow others to put you in a box or even pigeonhole yourself. What was clear in my conversation with Stephen is that he's always looking to evolve, to grow, to get better. It's clear he doesn't want to confine himself to just sports, a place that he's known for and what he's good at. That's a great lesson for all of us, to think about how our talents can apply beyond our current roles. Number two, defy the doubters. What's so incredible about Stephen A.'s story is to hear him talk about his challenges with reading comprehension as a kid, and then to know how he's carved out his career as one of the most gifted communicators and journalists. Here's the thing, you can let doubt discourage you, or you can let it fuel you. It's up to you. Which one are you going to choose? And number three, turn your setback into a comeback. When he was fired from ESPN in 2009, this could have easily been the end of his career. He could have mailed it in. Instead, he used it as an opportunity to ask himself some tough questions, to dig in a little bit, to learn from the experience with a good bit of humility. He got himself rehired 2 years later, and the rest is history. It's a reminder that you write your own story. Don't let someone else write the end for you. Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. This episode was edited and sound designed by the team at Sound On Studios. You can find out more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. Check it out. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.